Lighthouse was designed to provide light in times of darkness and encourage unity through partnerships and collaborations on our unbiased, all-in-one platform that integrates the best features of video hosting, social media, and e-commerce. Browse a creator's store while watching their video, and check your newsfeed while continuing to watch the video. Create a post, build communities with groups, or make a custom page. Shop your favorite products while continuing to watch the video, and simply close the video player at any time.
Welcome, fellow brave believers. This is Kingdom Cast, and I'm Sean, your host. This is the podcast where we search for knowledge, wisdom, and understanding of His Word, our Father's heavenly Word, and this world, so we can better relate His Word to this world. Thanks for joining me tonight. We're going to be continuing our Investigating Babylon series. This is going to be part 14. We're going to talk about the CIA, the Jesuits, military experiments of different kind, and of course, Scripture and how it relates to this idea of Babylon. So we are looking at all the details of Mystery Babylon. So I want to thank you everyone for being here. And I want to also just give a big shout out, a big thank you to everyone that supports us through the P.O. Box, through PayPal, through the mail. All of you guys are amazing. Thank you so much for your contributions. Thank you for everyone that's become a new patron lately. Waiting for the contextual study guide as well. We're making good strides on that. So I'm excited about that. I think you guys may have seen the update we talked about where one of our audience members, he has reached out to me. He actually is a professional graphic artist and works in that field, and so he helped me make it a little cleaner, even cleaner than what you saw with the intro there. So I just want to give a big shout out to Tom. He's helping us with that as time allows for both of us. So that's going to make it look very professional and going to help us get that to a publisher when it's fully done. I get all the books completed. So because we're looking at doing 80 plus books basically. So it's going to be more than just the traditional American Canon 66. And have a lot of other books from other canons in the world, around the world, included in that study guide. So hopefully it helps. I want to say hey to some of the people that are in the chat. We got looks like about 50 to 60 people in the live chat right now that's interacting. Lisa Mendez, Morgan Cardwell, Colin Crockett, welcome everyone. Nabi Sky, welcome. The Prodigal Son, Pepper Moon, Carrie M, welcome. Jeremiah 1516, GR Cleve, Jasmine W, Jessica Coy, welcome. Emissary of Elohim, cover to cover with Jeremy Pierce, Commander 777, welcome everyone. Miriam News here, Miss Marcia, Mike K. Gunder, Bill Craddock, KJ47, welcome everybody. And my lovely wife, El Wilkins 25, is here, throwing me kisses. She's watching from her own TV. She's not with me. I don't know if she'll ever be with me on these podcasts or not. It's not really her thing, but but maybe I can talk her into joining me one night. Who knows? And guys, I apologize if you hear some sort of weird, not weird, but if you just hear music in the background. Apparently, there's some sort of guy just playing his guitar behind my house, but he's playing it so loud that you can hear it all throughout the neighborhood. So there you go. Maybe he'll be up late. I don't know. So even though there's like a the brick wall of my garage is separating us. Yeah, he's just going at it, playing the guitar. So if you hear something in the background, that's what you're probably hearing. People are asking what my shirt says. I actually got this from Ryan and Summer Monday. I want to give a big shout out, big thanks. They sent me this shirt because apparently they said I don't pronounce it correctly. So they wanted to give me a shirt to help remind me how to pronounce this word correctly, guys. This is the Melchizedek, right? Not the Melchizedek or the Melchizedek, or definitely not the Melchizedek, but it's the Melchizedek. So yeah, it's fun. I appreciate them. It's a fun shirt. So, all right, guys, let us jump into this. I just want to say, I mean, if you like what we're doing, if you like the podcast, you want to see us do more, if you want to continue helping us continue to do this, because obviously all the information that I bring forward for these things, I mean, it takes me quite a bit of time to compile, research, put together, all that kind of stuff. So if you like what we're doing, you want to support us, all the links are in the video description below, whether you want to do Patreon, PayPal, or just a PO Box traditional, like some people. So big shout out to everyone that's doing that. And that's how you can help us out. All right, let's look at part 14 in our Investigating Babylon series. Okay. So as a quick reminder, we already went through the first 7 parts of this, which was the past. We talked about a lot of the things going on in history about the Tower of Babel and what started happening after that throughout history. And now we're going through, this is part 14. So this is the last installment of the present part of this series. Okay. So we've been looking at things pertaining to the present and how Mystery Babylon is still active and still involved all throughout the world. And then the next 7 episodes, we're going to be looking at the future. Okay. So this is, like I've shown before, just the European Union. It's kind of funny that they actually built a replica of what most people thought the Tower of Babel was, to an unfinished version of the Tower of Babel, what they thought it looked like. And the European Union, being an amalgamation of countries and languages, decided to build that in as an homage. Apparently, I mean, it's pretty telling in my opinion. But if you've been watching this series, you know just how telling it is. It's not just telling; it's 100% fitting. So let's look at the history of the Jesuits. Okay, guys, this is a group that is an offshoot, literally a militant offshoot arm of the Papacy, of the Vatican, specifically the Pope. So we're going to be looking at this. If you've watched this channel for any amount of time, you know that we are not Catholics on this channel, and we have shown and expounded upon the different ways that Catholicism for the last 17 to 1800 years has corrupted the faith of Yeshua. Those who are trying to follow Yeshua in discipleship and purity according to the word, the Torah, the prophets, they've corrupted that completely, and they promote a different version of what first AD Yeshua was and what his disciples practiced and preached. So that doesn't mean that everyone in the Catholic Church has a corrupt heart. That doesn't mean that everyone that's raised in the Catholic Church doesn't want to know God. That doesn't mean that, I know that was a double negative, guys, but please bear with me, that I'm not trying to throw a blanket over everyone that's in Catholicism, no matter how many good-hearted, yet unfortunately deceived and innocent people that are in there. They don't realize some of the details of their faith are very contrary to the word, because most Catholic churches do not actually have their people reading the word. So people just want to know God. They just go to the building and they think, oh, these people here talking about God. I want to know God. Unfortunately, they may wind up in that church, or their family invited them or something, or they were raised in it and didn't really know that there's a lot of man-made traditions and not a lot of scripture going on. So this is why there's a lot of people that have, quote unquote, come out of the Catholic Church and realize that, hey, I want to actually follow the Bible, and that's how you know God. So we pray for those people. But at the same time, I'm going to be showing you tonight, within the Catholic Church and other organizations, there is a lot of corruption. There's a lot of anti-biblical concepts, and it actually traces all the way back to ancient Babylon. So we're going to look real quick at the history of the Jesuits. And the Jesuits themselves, between 1555 and 1931, the Society of Jesus, which is the technical name for the Jesuit order. And just because they use the word Jesus, guys, doesn't mean they're doing it honor. Doesn't mean they're doing it scripturally. Doesn't mean they're doing it justice. They're abusing that name, even the transliterated English version of that name. They're abusing it, guys. They're not actually behaving like Yeshua behaved. Okay. So they're just using that. And there's actually a ton of controversy. I don't have time to go into that, but there was a ton of controversy when they declared themselves in the 1550s. They declared themselves the Society of Jesus. A lot of other people thought it was heretical, that it was horrible. They were like, no, don't do that. So just keep in mind that that's what they call themselves. And it's, in my opinion, when we're going to read what they're doing and saying, it's just mockery, because they're not behaving like the Father or the Son. It's horrible. Between 1555 and 1931, the Society of Jesus, the Jesuit order, was expelled from at least 83 countries, city-states, and cities for engaging in political intrigue and subversion plots against the welfare of the state. According to the records of the Jesuit priests of repute, this is from Thomas J. Campbell, practically every instance of expulsion was for political intrigue, political infiltration, political subversion, and inciting to political insurrection. Sounds like BLM. The Jesuits are known for their deception, spying, infiltration, assassination, and revolution. Sounds like Lenin. Sounds like a lot of people that we could point to in the 20th century and 21st century. It says they worked deep into the political field and plotted through politics throughout the world countries. And this is from the Babington Plot by J.E.C. Shepard on page 12. All right, guys, so let's continue to go here. The Jesuit oath and induction ceremony. Okay, a lot of people may be familiar with this, but you may not have read the fullness of it. This is actually documented in the Library of Congress. I think it's 1882 was the first time it was documented. So this is not conspiracy page. This is literally documented in the Library of Congress I'm about to read to you. So to become a Jesuit, they're going to take this oath, and then they go through this induction ceremony. And this is also the same ceremony and oath that's shared, as you see on screen here, by the Knights of Malta and the Knights of Columbus. And we're going to talk about people that are in those organizations as well. It's basically just offshoots of the same concept. So guys, remember, it's all about branding. The enemy is famous for taking, just like we talked about in like episode 10 or episode 7, we talked about the King of Babylon, and we talked about how he rebranded himself under different names in different countries because they spoke different languages and they had different cultures. So therefore, the trappings of what that quote unquote little g God, that he went out, the King of Babylon went out to portray himself as a God over the people and ruler over the people, and literally a God with more power than them. He rebranded himself everywhere he went. So that's why he would put on different makeup, different clothes for the Egyptians versus the Indians versus the Akkadians versus the Greeks. This is why he's all the same behavior, all the same Babylonian principles of destructive, sinful behavior is documented in all those countries. They have the same religious practices, but the people that they worshipped, they call them by different names. Okay? So this is how you rebrand yourself for deception. Okay, so this is the same thing the Jesuits have done over time, where they rebranded themselves because, as I just read, some other people caught on. 83 different countries over time caught on, to the point where they're like, yeah, we don't like these dudes. They're constantly meddling in our affairs and trying to do political insurrection, political subversion. So then, what do they have to do? They have to do a rebranding campaign. And the offshoots that came from that are organizations like the Knights of Malta and the Knights of Columbus. All right, so let's go into this actual oath. This is the Jesuit oath, guys. It documented in the Library of Congress. This is not me making this up. This is not from a conspiracy website. So I'm going to read this. Bear with me. It's not too long, but I'm going to read this here. It says, I, and then you would insert your name if you're going to go through this oath, right? It says, I, now in the presence of Almighty God, the Blessed Virgin Mary, the Blessed Michael the Archangel, and the Blessed St. John the Baptist, the Holy Apostles, St. Peter, and St. Paul, and all the saints and sacred hosts of heaven, and to you, my ghostly father, the superior general of the Society of Jesus, founded by St. Ignatius Loyola in the pontificate of Paul III, and continued to the present, do by the womb of the Virgin, the matrix of God, and the rod of Jesus Christ, declare and swear that His Holiness the Pope is Christ's vice-regent and is the true and only head of the Catholic or Universal Church throughout the earth, and that by virtue of the keys of binding and loosening, given to the holiness by my Savior, Jesus Christ, he has power to depose heretical kings, princes, states, commonwealths, and governments, all being illegal without his sacred confirmation, that they may be safely be destroyed. This is crazy, guys. Oops, 1 second. He says, therefore, to the utmost of my power, I shall and will defend this doctrine of his holiness's right and custom against all usurpers of the heretical or Protestant authority whatever, especially the Lutheran of Germany, Holland, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, and now pretended authority in churches of England and Scotland, and the branches of the same now established in Ireland and on the continent of America and elsewhere, all adherents in regard that they be usurped and heretical, opposing the Sacred Mother Church of Rome. Guys, this is... This is the same mentality that I see when I debate Trinitarians. You are out of their allegiance. You are out of their church if you disagree with their doctrine, and you're called heretics. It's crazy. I do now renounce and disown any allegiance as due to any heretical king, prince, or state named Protestants or liberals, or obedience to any of the laws, magistrates, or officers. I do further declare that the doctrine of the churches of England and Scotland and of the Calvinists, the Huguenots, and others of the name Protestants or liberals to be damnable, and they themselves damned, who will not forsake the same. It goes on in this oath to say, I do further declare that I will help, assist, and advise all or any of His Holiness's agents in any place wherever I shall be, in Switzerland, Germany, Holland, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, England, Ireland, or America, or any other kingdom or territory I shall come to, and do my uttermost to extirpate the heretical Protestants or liberal doctrines and to destroy all their pretended powers, regal or otherwise. I do further promise and declare that notwithstanding I am dispensed with to assume my religion heretical for the propaganda of the Mother Church's interests, to keep secret and private all her agents' counsels from time to time, as they may entrust me, and not to divulge, directly or indirectly, by word or writing or circumstance whatever, but to execute all that shall be proposed, given in charge, or discovered unto me by you, my ghostly father, or any of his sacred covenants. I want to stop real quick, guys. I don't know if y'all saw what I put on screen here, but I'm going to read that one more time, okay? Listen closely to what this oath is saying. And it's in the middle of it. He says, I do further promise and declare that notwithstanding I am dispensed with to assume my religion heretical for the propaganda of the Mother Church's interest. So, to my understanding, the way this reads to me, this is a spy. This is spy language for him to say his religion is adherence to the Mother Rome Catholic Church, like you just talked about, right? So therefore, he's saying, notwithstanding I'm dispensed with, I do promise and declare that notwithstanding I'm dispensed with, to assume my religion heretical for the propaganda of the Mother Church's interests. So if Mother Church Rome decides that they need to send you somewhere to fulfill an interest, and as a part of that mission, you need to consider Mother Church's religion heretical, meaning that it's not true, right? That you act like Catholicism is not true, well, then that's your assignment. That is a spy. Someone that acts like the person that sent them, they have no allegiance to, or don't believe them, or don't give them any authority or credit. It's crazy. All right. So, but this is just explaining from, 16th century language, kind of not translated, but just kind of brought into modern English. It's basically, this would be the oath that a spy is taking. Okay. He says, and of course, to keep secret and private all her agents' counsels from time to time, as they may entrust me, and to not to divulge directly or indirectly by word, writing, or circumstance whatever, but to execute all that should be proposed, given in charge, or discovered to me by you, my ghostly father, or any of his sacred covenants. I do further promise and declare that I will have no opinion or will of my own or any mental reservation whatsoever, even as a corpse or cadaver, but will unhesitatingly obey each and every command that I may receive from my superiors in the militia of the Pope and of Jesus Christ. I'm going to tell you right now, guys, Jesus Christ has no militia, right? This is, of course, blasphemy to the actual true scriptures. This is why I called it mockery at the very beginning. And of course, there's not supposed to be a militia of the Pope. The militia of Yeshua is the angels in heaven that come back to rout out these dudes at the end of days. And I'm going to explain that as we go into the future episodes. But ultimately, yeah, there is no militia of Jesus Christ. This is why they're profaning the name of God everywhere they go. This is why more atheists are made from Catholics than any other belief set. It's horrible. That I may go to any part of the world whithersoever I may be sent, to the frozen regions of the north, the burning sands of the desert of Africa, or the jungles of India, to the centers of civilization of Europe, or to the wild haunts of the barbarous savages of America, without murmuring or repining, and will be submissive in all things whatsoever communicated to me. I furthermore promise and declare that I will, when opportunity presents, make and wage relentless war, secretly or openly, against all heretics, Protestants, and liberals, as I am directed to do, to extirpate and exterminate them from the face of the whole earth, and that I will spare neither age, sex, or condition, and that I will hang, waste, boil, flay, strangle, and bury alive these infamous heretics. I will rip up their stomachs and wombs of their women and crush their infants' heads against the walls in order to annihilate forever their execrable race. This is getting pretty crazy, right? That when the same cannot be done openly, I will secretly use the poison cup, the strangulating cord, the steel of the poniard, or the leaden bullet, regardless of the honor, rank, dignity, or authority of the person or persons, whatever may be their condition in life, either public or private, as I at any time may be directed to do so by an agent of the Pope or superior of the Brotherhood of the Holy Faith of the Society of Jesus. In confirmation of which, I hereby dedicate my life, my soul, and all my corporal powers with this dagger which I now receive. I will subscribe my name written in my blood. Did you guys hear that? So now it's literally a blood oath. So he's opened himself up as a part of this induction ceremony to actually, with this dagger that he just received, that, by the way, the Jesuit symbol is a whole bunch of daggers, some straight and some crooked. So he's made with this dagger that I receive, and with his own blood, he's writing this testimony thereof. He said, should I prove false or weakened in my determination, may my brethren and fellow soldiers of the militia of the Pope cut off my hands and my feet, and my throat from ear to ear, my belly opened, and sulfur burned therein, with all the punishment that can be inflicted upon me on earth, and my soul be tormented by demons in eternal hell forever. They take this seriously, guys. They're absolutely brainwashed into a cult by the Pope. This is the Jesuit oath, the 1500s. And guys, I promise you, this didn't start in the 1500s. He goes on to say at the very end of it, all of which I, and this person would insert their name as a part of the ceremony, do swear by the Blessed Trinity and blessed sacraments, which I am now to receive, to perform on my part, to keep inviolable, and to do call all the heavenly and glorious host of heaven to witness the blessed sacrament of the Eucharist, and witness the same further with my name written and with the point of this dagger dipped in my own blood and sealed in the face of this holy covenant. Guys, this is literally a covenant of death. Put in the chat if y'all remember the verse that talks about those who make a covenant with death. I can't remember. But then it goes on, all right? That was the actual oath that the inductee is supposed to say, and then the actual person doing the ceremony, which is called the superior in this moment, this is the person that would finish part of the ceremony. And he goes on to say, then the inductee receives the wafer from the superior and writes his name with the point of his dagger dipped in his own blood taken from over his heart. Superior says to him, you will now rise to your feet, and I will instruct you in the catechism necessary to make yourself known to any member of the Society of Jesus belonging to this rank. In the first place, you, as a brother Jesuit, will with another mutually make the ordinary sign of the cross as an ordinary Roman Catholic would. Then one cross his wrists, the palm of his hands open, and then the other in answer crosses his feet, one above the other. The first points with the forefinger of the right hand to the center of the palm of the left. The other with the forefinger of the left hand points to the center of the palm of the right. The first then with his right ankles makes a circle around his head, touching it. With his right hand makes a circle around his head, touching it. The other then with the forefinger of his left hand touches the left side of his body, just below his heart. The first then with his right hand draws it across the throat of the other, and the latter then with the dagger down the stomach and abdomen of the first. The first then says Eustum, and the other answers Nekar, the first Reges, and the other answers Impious, the meaning of which has already been explained. The first will then present a small piece of paper folded in a peculiar manner 4 times, which the other will cut longitudinally, and in opening the name Jesu will be found written upon the head and arms of a cross 3 times. You will then give and receive with him the following questions and answers. And guys, I'm sure some of you in the chat have probably noticed that the word Jesu is used by Judaism, and that is the name that they, in blasphemy, intentionally give to Yeshua of Nazareth. They don't want to call him Yeshua. They shorten it to Jesu because supposedly it's an insult to him. Many of you guys probably are aware of that. So then it goes on that in this ceremony, he gets a question. He says, the superior questions the inductee. He asks him, from where do you come from? And the inductee answers, the Holy Faith. The superior would ask, whom do you serve? The initiate, the inductee would say, the Holy Father at Rome, the Pope, the Roman Catholic Church universal throughout the world. Who commands you? The successor of St. Ignatius Loyola, the founder of the Society of Jesus, or the soldiers of Jesus Christ. Who received you? A venerable man in white hair. How? With a naked dagger. I kneeling upon the cross beneath the banners of the Pope and of our sacred order. Did you take an oath? I did, to destroy heretics and their governments and rulers, to spare neither age, sex, nor condition, to be as a corpse without any opinion or will of my own, but to implicitly obey my superiors in all things without hesitation of murmuring. Will you do that? And I will. This is what he says in the ceremony towards the end of it after they take the oath. He then finishes by, he's asked, how do you travel? And he says, in the bark of Peter the fisherman. He says, where do you travel? To the four corners of the globe. For what purpose? To obey the orders of my general and superiors and execute the will of the Pope and faithfully fulfill the conditions of my oath. And then the superior concludes with, go ye then into all the world and take possession of all the lands in the name of the Pope. He who will not accept him as the vicar of Jesus and his vice-regent on earth, let him be accursed and exterminated. Whew, it's crazy, guys. It's crazy. All right, you guys put in the chat Isaiah 28:15. I thought it was in Isaiah. I just couldn't remember off the top of my head. Yeah, it says, for you said, we have made a covenant with death, for we have fashioned an agreement with Sheol. When the overwhelming scourge passes through, it will not touch us, because we've made our lies our refuge and falsehood our hiding place. And then, of course, Yahweh reprimands them for that falseness, that false covenant that they made with death. But we're going to talk about the scriptures both in Zephaniah, 1 Samuel 5, Jeremiah. We're going to talk about these same guys, the same people that he's reprimanded in Isaiah 28, because it's the same cult that's offshoots from the original Babylon. So this is that was the Jesuit oath, guys. And here is a picture from 1933 of the Papacy and the German Reich. And as you see on here on the left, this is Cardinal Parcelli. He's Pope Pius X. The guy to the next to him right here, his name is Franz von Papen. And we're going to talk about him in just a little bit. And then over here to the right, the dude standing up that looks like an absolute gamma male. That is Pope Paul VI later down the road. So this is when he's young, before he becomes the Pope, right? So this is same thing with the Cardinal Parcelli. He hasn't become the Pope yet in this picture. So there's two people that become popes later in their life, pictured in a treaty that's been made in 1933 with the German Reich, which consequently led to the rise of Hitler. And so this is implicit. This was a highly controversial treaty that the papacy made with the German Reich, and this is implicit during that time that they were supporting them and helping them. And then things changed once Hitler took over, and Hitler started persecuting Catholic churches because of he didn't like the Jesuits. Basically, their spy activities interrupted with his internal secret police, right? So, and eventually that treaty fell apart. But the point is, there was initial collaboration there. And Franz von Papen, I didn't have time to go into a complete biography of this guy. I just want to let you guys know that this dude, I don't know why I've never heard about this guy before, doing this full-on study and trying to get into the details. But this guy was just absolutely a Jesuit through and through. From what we just read, like he was an international spy in South America, Central America, even North America, even into Canada, and I think in Ireland at one point. Kicked out of multiple countries because of his revolutionary dissident behavior with those different places, trying to blow up train depots, bridges, different types of things throughout World War I, as well as in between World War I and World War II. He actually became German Chancellor, which is why he was in that picture in 1933 that we just showed later, and had connections with the papacy of the Vatican. And then once Hitler took over, he became a high-level Nazi, an SS. Okay. After the war, I think it was 1947, West Berlin, or West Germany, I should say, they had denazification courts, and he was convicted for war crimes, assisting, the Third Reich. So this guy was... this is just an example of what we were talking about. This is just an example. He was born German, raised German, a Catholic, to the point where he was acknowledged by the papacy But before he was put in a position of chancellorship and power in Germany, he was all over the North and South America doing what Jesuits do. The point is, guys, the whole purpose, like we just read that oath, they can be sent anywhere in the world. And they're sent to, if they have to, according to their mission, deny their allegiance to Catholicism, to their belief in Mother Holy Roman Church of Rome. So this is called spies, literally spies. This is not what the Bible teaches. This is opposite of what the Bible teaches, but this directly goes back to the papacy. So we go here. This guy, everyone recognizes this guy. And this was one of his statements. He says, "Above all, I've learned from the Jesuits, and so did Lenin too. For as I recall, the world has never known anything quite so splendid as the hierarchical structure of the Catholic Church. There are quite a few things I simply appropriated from the Jesuits for the use of the party." And this is from Manfred Barthel in his book, The Jesuits, The History and Legend of the Society of Jesus, from 1984, page 266. This guy, Cardinal Jorge Bergoglio of Argentina, was elected Pope Francis on March 13, 2013, and he is the first openly documented Jesuit to be elected Pope. I believe he's not the first. I think he's the first openly, but they claim he's the first. I just think that, I just think that is, they think people are not going to catch on at this point. They're in every part of facets of society, government, military, all over the place. I'm going to go show you here in a minute. So I just don't think that they care to people don't know what Jesuits are. The average person, they're too busy watching Family Guy and TikTok. So no one's paying attention. So this guy was openly a Jesuit, and he's nominated as the Pope. Abe Lincoln said, "It's not against the Americans of the South alone I'm fighting. It's more against the Pope of Rome, his perfidious Jesuits, and their blind and bloodthirsty slaves that we have to defend ourselves." This is from the book 50 Years in the Church of Rome by Charles Chenique, page 496. Also, about Lincoln, it says, "It would seem that the Jesuits had it in mind from the beginning of the American Civil War to find occasion for the taking of Mr. Lincoln, Mr. Abraham Lincoln, to the assassination of it." This is also from the source of Thomas M. Harris. He was a U.S. Army Brigadier General, and he's the author of the book Rome's Responsibility for the Assassination of Abraham Lincoln. It's quite the claim from a Brigadier General. So we go back a little bit in the history, and we look at this guy. It says, "It is of faith that the Pope has the right of deposing heretical and rebel kings." Well, that sounds exactly like the oath that we just read. It says, Monarchs so deposed by the Pope are converted into notorious tyrants and may be killed by the first who can reach them. If the public cause cannot meet with its defense in the death of a tyrant, it's lawful for the first who arrives to assassinate him. And this is from a guy whose name's, I think it was Francisco Suarez, but he was just referred to as Jesuit Suarez. In his book in the 1600s, Defensio de Dei, this is book 6, C4, page 13 and 14. This is the statement of a Jesuit affirming the Jesuit oath, basically acknowledging that they are openly telling people they're assassins. They're political subversion and assassins, like sent by the Pope directly. This is information that's just out there. So this is a cute little diagram that I found that someone put together in a book. It's got Avro Manhattan. It's from his book, The Vatican Billions. And it says, some of you may have heard about this idea of the quote unquote Black Pope, or the idea that the Pope that we see in the forefront is just like the stage guy, the stage presence, but there's actually another guy that's kind of running the scene. And so this just gives you a breakdown of the control arms throughout the whole world, through different for the Jesuits, directly from the papacy to the Jesuits. And then from there it breaks off, and the Jesuits become into these institutions, not just the Illuminati, but the CFR, the international bankers, the mafia itself, the Club of Rome, Opus Dei. We're going to talk about some of those here in a minute, the Masons, and also any other forms of New Age movement, because they're enacting strategic plans for creating instability in countries, political subversion, political infiltration, and many times that's done through cultural movements and not just simply through bills that are passed or through having a certain person get elected or through assassinations, but it's going to be done through cultural movements. That's why many people already are well aware that the CIA was heavily involved in the Aquarius hippie cultural movement in the United States in the 1960s. And yes, we're going to do direct ties to the CIA here in just a minute, or here right now, I should say. Project Monarch. This is one of the CIA's projects. It's hard to see. It's so much I was trying to fit on one page here. Project Monarch is a U.S. Defense Department codename assigned to a subsection of the Central Intelligence Agency's Operation Artichoke, which later became Project MKUltra, whereas Project Monarch was officially dedicated sometime in the early 60s by the U.S. Army. Project Monarch is a genealogical approach to define transgenerational, which is genetic psychology, a behavioral modification through trauma-based psychological mind control. The original documentation which spawned this project was derived from collective intensive research previously performed by top SS German Nazi scientists from 1927 to 1941. As the result of their interest in the multi-generational effects of occult psychology as applied in the nuclear family of known pedophiles. The identified leader of this research was an SS officer by the name of Himmler. This German top secret or government top secret black arts research was originally considered to be a significant bonus by product of the U.S. Department of Defense's Project 63, which is also known as Project National Interest. Project 63 was dictated to the secret importation of a group of German Nazi and Italian fascist scientists. This was accomplished in 1959 so as to reunite these scientists with their captured comrades from World War II. These scientists' areas of expertise were primarily physics, rocket R&D, and psychiatry, mind control, psychological warfare, and microbiology and pharmacology. Oh, pharmacology and microbiology and mind control all in one? That sounds like 2021. So this is Project Monarch in its origin and its inception. Okay. Goes on to MKUltra, like it talked about. It kind of morphed into another facet of the program. Promise you, Project Monarch is still going. That's why I had the Hollywood sign up there, okay? Trauma-based mind control from birth. This is why so many programs, literally the word program is intentional, and so many programs and TVs and movies push things at children that creates behavioral modification, and they create cartoons with it. That was the earliest form of all this from the 50s and 60s was cartoons were watched by kids and adults. It was a huge deal because it was cheaper to make. You know what I'm saying? It was easier. They could just put the sound effects with all the drawings. Whereas that starts early in a person's life to start doing that behavioral modification over time. Psychological warfare. It's a form of mind control. So this is why the government and the CIA specifically has been heavily connected, and specifically the military has been heavily connected to Hollywood since its inception. Okay. It later morphed into something called MKUltra, and the CIA began to experiment with LSD, which is lysergic acid diethylamide. I don't know if I said that right. Under agency chemist and poison expert Sidney Gottlieb. He believed the agency could harness the drug's mind-altering properties for brainwashing or psychological torture. Under the auspices of Project MKUltra, the CIA began to fund studies at Columbia University, Stanford University, and other colleges on the effects of the drug. After a series of tests, the drug was deemed too unpredictable for use in counterintelligence. MKUltra also included experiments with ecstasy, mescaline, heroin, barbiturates, methamphetamines, and psilocybins, which is mushrooms, magic mushrooms. So this was the idea of MKUltra as an offshoot of trying to. They went from trying to create propaganda through film, TV, and movies and cartoons to saying, let's just directly go to the college kids and get them high and see what we can do. And this was done to a lot of people without their consent, without their knowledge. Sometimes to the point of capturing people, taking them to facilities, and forcibly exposing them to these drugs and studying them. More experiments that we see done by the military, the CIA, and just the government in general is the Willowbrook experiment, which a lot of people are not aware of. And this was something that it's kind of, it's rough, guys. It's going to be hard to hear, but this is the shocking Willowbrook experiments that were aimed at discovering a cure for hepatitis. The continuous study lasted from 1956 to 1970. The subjects were taken from Willowbrook State School, which is located in Staten Island, New York. They were mentally handicapped children, and the series of tests involved injecting the children with experimental drugs that were meant to cure hepatitis. Not only were the children unable to provide consent, but they would often die from the treatments. When questioned about their actions, officials justified themselves by stating that hepatitis was prevalent in the institution, and nearly all patients would become infected in any way. The children did not contract the disease naturally. The children who did not contract the disease naturally were infected by the administrators to carry on the experiment, guys. This is just a predecessor to COVID-19 and the worldwide experiment that we're watching now. What are they telling you now? Oh, you don't have it yet? You'll get it soon. So therefore, let us inject it into you with this supposed medicine that's supposed to counteract it. It's all been done before, guys. It's all been done before. Operation Mockingbird. This one was directly by the CIA itself, not just a cooperative offshoot. This one is an alleged large-scale program. And I say alleged, but guys, come on. It's a large-scale program of the United States Central Intelligence Agency that began in the early years of the Cold War and attempted to manipulate news media for propaganda purposes. So, guys, even though the official narrative is that, oh, this is an alleged thing, right? No, literally in Congress, I think it was in 2019 or 2017, the CIA was testifying before Congress, and they asked the CIA directly. One of the congressmen asked them, "Are you trying to tell me that there are your agents, your CIA agents, in all the different news agencies on TV right now?" And the CIA guy responds with, "Well, we'll have to finish this conversation off the record in private." And he wouldn't answer the question because literally Operation Mockingbird's been going on since the 60s. So if you ever wondered, if you've ever seen those funny little clips on YouTube or other social media floating around where it has all the different, places all over the United States, and they're repeating almost verbatim the same news story over and over and over from different news agencies all over the states. Yeah, it's because they're all being controlled. It's not the fault of the lady or the guy that's reading the report. Literally, they're paid to get up there, get their makeup on, look pretty, and read the information that's put in their hand. They don't write the information. Someone else does. This is what's called propaganda for behavioral control. Social media. Boom, boom, boom. This is actually from CBS News themselves, okay? So if they're being controlled by the CIA, then the CIA is outright admitting they control and monitor and scan social medias as well. But I think most of us have already known this. It says you don't need to wear a tinfoil hat to believe that the CIA is using Facebook, Twitter, and Google and other social media to spy on people. That's because the CIA publishes a helpful list of press releases on all the social media ventures it sponsors via its technology investment arm in QTEL. The company that takes in QTEL's monies aren't shy about publicizing what they're up to either. Most recently, GeoSymbol announced an update to its Geo X-ray product, which monitors social media chatter based on location. So whenever you see ads on your social media sites and on Google, a part of that is one of these biggest advertising agencies in the world called In-Q-Tel, which is owned by the CIA. So that's how that's their plausible deniability to gain access to the algorithm of the site, is that they're just the sponsor. They're sponsoring the companies whose advertisements are being bought by these social medias to help them make money. But through the backdoor code, it allows them to data mine all kinds of pertinent information from the users. By the way, Lighthouse will not be doing that. So that's where they're literally telling you right here, all of it, they're scanning your social media. It's this tool for the CIA to actually spy on the American people or anyone in any country. So let's look at a unique story that was written by the Catholic Herald in 2016, where it actually talks about why Catholics seem to do really well in the CIA. It's just hilarious to me. So this is it says 3 out of the last 5 CIA directors have been Catholic: Michael Hayden, Leon Panetta, and the current director, John Brennan. Now, looking back, a number of Catholics led the agency in critical periods during the Cold War. Some of the most influential directors in CIA history have been Catholic, men such as Walter Bedell Smith, John McCone, William Colby, and William Casey. They were not just casual Catholics. These were devout massgoers in many cases, and members of groups like the Knights of Malta. Guys, what did we talk about at the beginning of this presentation? The Knights of Malta, the Knights of Columbus, they're just an offshoot. They take the same Jesuit oath as the actual Jesuit oath. They're just an offshoot of Jesuits. Literally, the Catholic Herald, this article written by William Vargas in May 5th, 2016, and with titled, "Why Catholics Thrive in the CIA?" They're literally Jesuits. Jesuit plants. Literally. Like, it's just that easy. Here's William Casey, one of the guys that was mentioned, who's a part of the Knights of Malta. This is his famous quote. He was the CIA director from 1981, 1987. That's, yes, during the Ronald Reagan years. For all of you out there that might be watching this, who are extreme fans of Ronald Reagan. He says, "We'll know our disinformation program is complete when everything the American public believes is false." That was in 1980. That was 30 years ago, guys. 30, 35, almost 40 years ago. That's then. Now add another 20 years on from the approximate 20 years from the inception of the CIA. Guys, they've been doing this for a long time. They're literally telling you that they're treating the society of the United States like a big experiment. They're providing disinformation for propaganda. They're taking the practices, the medical, the psychological, the cultural, revolutionary, and societal changes from literal Nazis, as well as being directed by the papacy. Now, I'm not about to tell you, I know a lot of people will be upset. I'm not about to tell you that the United States is Mother Babylon. It's not. I'm going to go talk about that in the last 2 episodes of this series. And I'm not about to tell you that the Mother Church of the Holy Roman Mother Church of Rome and the Vatican is not Mother Babylon. I think it's the whore that rides the beast, but it's not Mother Babylon. So we'll get there. Be patient with me. Thanks for continuing to check out this series. But we're reading right here, the Jesuits are the militia, the militant arm of assassins, political infiltrators of the Pope, directly connected to the CIA in the United States. And as you guys know, the CIA is not just operating within the United States, but it also operates all over the world. Famously, infamously, I should say. Notoriously. This says the American section of the Sovereign Military Order of Malta has about 1,000 members, including 300 dames. They represent the vanguard of American Catholicism, the point at which the Vatican and the U.S. ruling elite intersect. The Knights of Malta comprise what is perhaps the most exclusive club on earth. They are more than the Catholic aristocracy. They can pick up a telephone and chat with the Pope. This is by historian Stephen Birmingham. Now we're going to get into Opus Dei. This is another offshoot. That's why their logo looks very much like the Jesuit logo. Of all the groups that are engaged in the U.S.-sponsored campaign against liberation theology, none has played a more significant role than Opus Dei, which translates as God's work, a fast-growing Catholic lay society whose political activities are shrouded in secrecy. Opus Dei was founded in 1928 by José María Escriva de Balaguer, a young Spanish priest and lawyer. By the way, guys, they're all priests. The Jesuits, they're all nominated as, I didn't have time to go into that, but if you want to do your own research on how the Jesuits are given that position, they become a priest as they become into the Jesuit order. It's a perversion of the Levites of God. It's a perversion of the high priesthood of God, who is to be a defender of Torah, who is to be a defender of the Father's behavior, of his covenant behavior, his righteous, which means good behavior, his right behavior. The Levite priests and high priests, they were supposed to defend that good behavior, to know it, to do it better than the average Israelite. In the covenant of Israel with God, they were supposed to be a defender of that, not political subversion, military infiltration, psychological warfare, experiments against other nations, other countries, to degrade them, to experiment on them. That's a perversion. This is why you just read the Jesuit oath. They call it a covenant because it is a covenant to them. They're going into blood covenant with death. They're going to blood covenant with the idea of becoming an assassin that doesn't question and just does whatever he's told. It's a perversion. They're called priests. Yeah, okay. But they're priests of Rome, but ultimately it's of the system of Babylon, which is controlled by the dragon. All right. So they're literally they're occult priests. They just don't realize they're not calling themselves that, but that's literally what they would be called back in the days of ancient Israel. So it says, today there are more than 70,000 members. This is crazy, guys, of Opus Dei. More than 70,000 members. This was an offshoot of Jesuits. And in 87 countries. Only a small percentage are priests. The rest are mostly middle and upper class businessmen, professionals, military personnel, and government officials. Here's their freshman class. Here's the first year that they organized Opus Dei. It's crazy to me that they all just want to dress in black. It's just hilarious to me. It's just that seems kind of superficial, but you're like, oh yeah, but the priests of Israel, they all wore the white linen. They looked nice. They wore white because it represented the resurrection robes they're going to get at the resurrection. These guys literally covenanted with death to dress like death. It's interesting. This is a guy who came out of Opus Dei, right? So he actually broke out, defected, and he tried to tell a testimony. He says, much of what is known about Opus Dei comes from ex-members, such as John Roche, a professor at Oxford University in England. He broke his oath of secrecy after leaving the order. According to Roche, self-flagellation with whips and spiked chains is a normal part of the rigid spiritual discipline that Opus Dei imposes on its full-time members, including college-age recruits of both genders. Personal identity suffers a severe battering. Some are reduced to shadows of their former selves. It's called psychological manipulation. They're brain control. This is it's a variant form of the MK Ultra, except without the drugs. It's through physical torture. This is common with cults, right? It says others become severely disturbed. You mean possessed? I don't think that's what I meant to say, but yeah, well, that's another video. Roche wrote this in a paper called The Inner World of Opus Dei. Internally, it's a totalitarian and imbued with fascist ideas turned to religious purposes, ideas which were surely drawn from the Spain of its early years. It is virtually a sect or cult in spirit, a law unto itself, totally self-centered, grudgingly accepting Roman authority because it still considers Rome orthodox and because of the vast pool of recruits accessible to it as a respected Catholic organization. Dr. Roche describes Opus Dei as an Orwellian world employing much doublethink and internal and external deception. Yet, what do we read? They're comprised of, what does it say? As of professionals, upper class businessmen, military personnel, government officials, priests. So let's look at the scriptures. What does the Father have to say on things like this? Should any of us become a part of these, go through an oath to be a part of these organizations, to be inducted into Knights of Malta, Knights of Columbus, the Jesuit Order, Opus Dei, any of these other groups, or even Freemasonry? You become what's called an initiate who gets inducted into the order, which is their little sect, their cult, their club. Okay. Well, I want to give a big shout out to Gareth Guest. I'm not sure if he's in the chat tonight, but he actually pointed this out a couple months ago in the Septuagint. You guys probably know we like to have cross-reference Septuagint when we're reading the scriptures because it has a lot of things that were left out of the Masoretic. Septuagint translation came around approximately 1,100 years before the Masoretic translation of the Bible, and it was originally in Greek. So in Deuteronomy 23:17 in the Septuagint, Yahweh says this: "There shall not be a harlot of the daughters of Israel, and there shall not be a fornicator of the sons of Israel. There shall not be an idolatrous of the daughters of Israel, and there shall not be an initiated person of the sons of Israel." Why would he say that? Because also remember just a few chapters earlier, he's talking about those who practice witchcraft, mediums, spiritists, diviners, those who are false prophets. Deuteronomy 13, Deuteronomy 18 goes on to Deuteronomy 23 to express, in addition to all those behaviors, the harlots, the daughters of Israel, the fornicators, the sons of Israel, that'd be people that participate in the temple worship, where they would have the male and female prostitutes, and the other people, when they do their worship, after they come into the threshold of the temple, the pagan temple to Baal, they then go and offer their sacrifice and then go in and participate in the activities in the temple, which usually involve male and female prostitutes. In that same way, he would say, do not become an initiate of that institution. That means you're not just a participant in that cult, which was called the cult of Baal, the cult of Apollo. You're not just a participant, but you actually become a part of their priesthood as well. Yahweh is directly telling them, Deuteronomy 23:17, do not become an initiate into that. Let's look at some examples here. 1 Samuel 5, 1-5. After the Philistines had captured the ark of God, they took it from Ebenezer to Ashdod. They carried it into the temple of Dagon and set it beside his statue. When the people of Ashdod got up early the next morning, there was Dagon fallen on his face before the ark of the Lord. So they took Dagon and returned him to his place. But when they got up early the next morning, there was Dagon fallen on his face before the ark of the Lord again, with his head and his hands broken off, lying on the threshold. Only the torso remained. That is why, to this day, priests of Dagon and all who enter the temple of Dagon in Ashdod do not step on the threshold. So this is a ritual that they adopted when the Philistines had captured the ark and they tried to set it inside the temple of Dagon. This happens as a result. And then a superstition arose that they are not going to step on the threshold when they enter into the temple of Dagon. So what they do is they make a big deal about crossing the threshold at that point, from that point forward, with going into their pagan occult temples. Zephaniah 1:7-9. The father actually reprimands, is speaking to the rebellious, and he's talking about some of their practices and how he's going to wipe away all that nonsense in the future. And he says in verse 7, be silent in the presence of the Lord God, for the day of the Lord is near. Indeed, the Lord has prepared a sacrifice. He has consecrated his guests. On the day of the Lord's sacrifice, I will punish the princes, the sons of the king, and all who are dressed in foreign apparel. On that day, I will punish all who leap over the threshold, who fill the house of their master with violence and deceit. What are the Jesuits supposed to do? They serve their master to go implore violence and deceit. They serve a false god under a false priesthood. And who are those people recruiting out of? All these secret societies that we talked about that are at the high level, they recruit down out of the feeder secret societies who practice the same things. And we're going to read about that here in just a minute. Jeremiah chapter 5, 20-24. Yahweh says, declare this in the house of Jacob and proclaim it in Judah. Hear this, O foolish and senseless people who have eyes but do not see, who have ears but do not hear. Do not fear me, declares Yahweh. Do you not tremble before me, the one who set the sand as the boundary for the sea, an enduring barrier it cannot cross? The waves surge, but they cannot prevail. They roar but cannot cross it. But these people have stubborn and rebellious hearts. They've turned aside and gone away. They've not said in their hearts, let us fear God, our Elohim. Let us fear Yahweh, our Elohim, who gives the rains both autumn and spring and season, who keeps for us the appointed weeks of harvest. Your iniquities have diverted these from you. Your sins have deprived you of my bounty. For among my people are wicked men. Let's check this out. For among my people are wicked men. What's going on in the days of Jeremiah, guys? This is leading into the time of the southern house of the kingdom of Judah being invaded by Nebuchadnezzar and taken into exile into Babylon. And there was great apostasy in the kingdom of Judah by not just the priesthood, but also the rulers, the kings, and even the people. This is why in Jeremiah 3:8-10, it says that the kingdom of Judah was more treacherous than the northern house of Israel. It says right here, fathers, Yahweh is telling them, my people, among my people are wicked men. They watch like fowlers lying in wait. They set a trap to catch men. Like cages full of birds, so their houses are full of deceits. Therefore, they've become powerful and rich. They've grown fat and sleek and would have excelled in the deeds of the wicked. They have not taken up the cause of the fathers that they might prosper, nor have they defended the rights of the needy. Should I not punish them for these things, declares Yahweh? Should I not avenge myself on such a nation as this? A horrible and shocking thing has happened in the land. The prophets prophesy falsely. The priests rule by their own authority. My people love it, but what will you do in the end? The people were rebelling because the leaders had rebelled, the kings and the priests. And specifically in the days of Ezekiel and Jeremiah, this is why Ezekiel 44:7-9, Yahweh has to reaffirm in the future, I'll never let an uncircumcised or a foreigner come into my house, because that's what they were allowing to do. If you go read Ezekiel chapter 8, or chapter 7 and 8, Yahweh shows Ezekiel through a vision what's actually happening in the inner chambers of the temple. They're worshiping Helios. They're worshiping Dagon. They're worshiping the sun gods. They're worshiping Apollo. Literally, there's 25 people bowing down to the east and worshiping an idol inside Yahweh's temple. And if we take the inference of Ezekiel 44:7-9 and what I'm reading right here, these are not people that are they're not circumcised in their heart or in their flesh. They're not trying to be in covenant with Yahweh, but they're using his building and profaning his name by worshiping other gods. This is the same practice, and these people are full of deceit. They're lying in wait to catch people, right? Because they're trying to deceive people. Guys, this is what Yahweh reprimanded the northern house and the southern house over a long time period. But, the prophet Elijah had to deal with Jahab and Jezebel going into the days of Isaiah, leading up to the days of Jeremiah and Ezekiel. It was a long time period. They were going through this mass rebellion in spurts and in different segments and groups. And there was a moment of shining Hezekiah, then it went back, went to Manasseh, and there was like good and bad, and it wasn't consistent. And ultimately, they were envying. This is what Isaiah, I can't remember the chapter right now, but the people of the northern house have been reprimanded by Isaiah for envying the Assyrians because they were intertrading with these people, intermarrying against the covenant. They were getting caught up and being seduced politically by other nations from within. Guys, this is what we read in the Jesuit Oath. This is the same people, the same behavior. And they practice literally the same superstitions and the same occult initiation rituals. They worship the same gods. They have the same symbols of the same gods. Guys, Babylon has been trying to infiltrate Israel forever. And any nation that tries to be good, any people group that tries to be good, the little tentacles are sent out through their spies of infiltrators, politically, violently at times, to try to get in and get people away from covenant behavior to Yahweh and take them into the covenant behavior of Babylon. And we're going to talk about that in the part 21 of this series. We talk about the War of the Two Kingdoms. We're going to go into that much further, but I'm just going to give you a preface right now. Guys, you guys ready to read about this crazy thing, which is the actual ceremony of the first degree ceremony of Masonry? It's crazy. So this is something this is just like I don't know who made this. It's just from the Grand Lodge of Berkshire. But it's just a quick little guide. It's hilarious. It's actually a quick start guide for initiation of the first degree in Freemasonry. And this is the newly admitted entered apprentice and a proposed appointee as a personal mentor. And then they're going to speak with the master, and then they're going to go through the actual lodge. So, but let's just look down here real quick. These are some key points. This is a quick start guide, right? It says your preparation outside the lodge. Each part of your preparation had meaning. Some of the symbolism was explained later by the worshipful master. Other parts are explained in the lectures of the 3 degrees of craft Freemasonry. Look at number 2. You took the first step across the threshold. I don't know if you guys can see this. I'm sorry. 1 second. Here we go. So number 2 says, you took the first step across the threshold into the open lodge and met the first challenge. Although the crossing, this is crazy, guys. Although the crossing of the threshold in this manner is significant, it is only the first part of the whole ceremony, which is described later as your admission amongst Masons. They don't tell you that when you cross the threshold into the lodge, it's super significant, and it is them allowing you admission into as an initiate into their cult. They only tell you that after you're done. This is an initiation ceremony. What do we read from Deuteronomy 23:17? Let no man of Israel be an initiate. Do not participate in secret societies and these cults. It's a cult. And they literally, in this particular cult, in the Freemasons, one of the most well-renowned all across the world, with lodges everywhere all across the world. Supposedly, even there's a lodge in Antarctica. It's crazy. There's Freemason, there's Freemasonic lodges everywhere. There's a huge temple to George Washington in Washington, D.C. They literally call their buildings temples, by the way. And the moment that you cross the threshold of their temple through your initiation ceremony, that's basically, whether you knew it or not, you're becoming one of them. Is a big deal. The threshold was a big deal to them, just like it was to Baal and Dagon cults, which are offshoots of Babylon. It's the same people, the same practices, the same deceptions, the same instruments, if you will, of disrupting civilizations, steering behavioral modification of civilizations. Guys, you always realize there was massive amounts of drugs and alcohol at the Baal temples and Dagon temples where they did their ceremonies. That was one of the reasons why it was so enticing for people. You literally, their version of going to church and worshiping their God was taking drugs and having sex, getting drunk. Like it's crazy. Absolutely insane, guys. Nothing's new under the sun. It's all the same. It's all the same behaviors. It's all the same. It's the ways of Babylon, and for each culture and each new era, if you will, each new big shift in societies, they have to figure out a way. How are we going to do the same behaviors, but we've got to figure out a way to either get better at it or sneakier with it, or change it up a little bit, rebrand it a little bit, so people don't realize this is what we were doing 300 years ago, or even 20 years ago. I didn't even get to one of the worldwide experiments that they did. Remember we talked about how the idea of the first Jesuits and all that. There were Opus Dei. They were all, excuse me, not that. The Nazis and the behavioral modification experiment that Himmler was, the Italian fascist scientists and the Nazis that they brought back together after World War II. The United States brought them back together under what used to be the OSS, but then became the CIA. And they brought them back together to start Project Monarch, which led to Project MKUltra, where they worked with microbiology and pharmacology for mind manipulation and mind control, behavioral modification. That's pharmacology. I mean, that's pharmakia. That's always been a part of Babylon. It's always been a part of it. It tried to entice you into their system, their society, which the guy who broke out, that professor from Oxford, I can't remember his name right now, who broke out of the Opus Dei cult, he was just saying, look, it's Orwellian and it's doublethink, right? And once you do this, but all the behaviors are opposite of that. And sometimes their language is opposite of that. We see that all the time. And I mean, we've seen that how much in the last year and a half with the amazing amounts of doublethink and doublespeak that we've seen from the U.S. government and from all the news agencies pertaining to this supposed worldwide pandemic. So, I mean, this is the same kind of stuff. Yeah, Prodigal Son. I didn't have time to go into Mormonism. You're right. They're also founded by a Mason. Joseph Smith was a Mason. I mean, it's all the same, guys. It's just they have to. Like I said, they have different offshoots. They have different, little lesser secret societies that don't have as much power that they recruit from to find out. That's why you get to 33rd degree. Suddenly, you can become somewhat high level. According to that, whether you're in the Scottish Rite or the York Rite, then you can get up into the higher levels, whether it's the Club of Rome or the actual Illuminati or Opus Dei or different things like that. So yeah, I mean, they have a hierarchy within their system. That's like we read the quote from Adolf Hitler. He said, I took the Jesuits hierarchy organizational structure because I thought it was great. I thought it was wonderful. It's crazy, guys. It's crazy. This is just trying to show you that the idea of Babylon and all of its different machinations throughout society and throughout history has always been the same. I mean, we've talked about this another time, like part 10 and part 11, we talked about the practices of Babylon. I went over these big overarching ideas, the big five. But this kind of gets into some more detailed ones that are talking about cultural revolution and change, specifically that the scriptures talk about as well. And they practice the same superstitions. They even call them the same things, the initiates, and there are cults. They're a cult, just like the Apollo cults, the Baal cults, the Dagon cults. They're cults. Osiris cults, the cults of death. All of it at the top of that hierarchy of that cult is the dragon, and we'll be talking about him later. His right-hand man, that's Apollyon. That's the king of Babylon, like we talked about in episode 7 or part 7. So that's, if you haven't seen it, go back and watch the previous parts. If you guys have any questions, put them in all caps in the chat, and I'll be glad to take some questions if you have any. Hey, Mike Marinoth is in the house. Hey, brother. Hope you're doing well tonight. Yeah, again, there's so many different offshoots I could have went with. I had like 3 or 4 slides on Skull and Bones. I ended up just scrapping them because I was like, I've already got too much, and I'm just having to hit, you know, I'm just having to hit them like speed bumps. As far as the different topics that I could have went into and all the different groups and offshoots, even just within the United States. I didn't even go into all the countries where all the Jesuits have all their institutions, first primary schools, secondary schools, colleges, and universities, and how many people of history, of nobility, and also of prominence and fame and political figures that came from these Jesuit schools. I mean, it's crazy, guys. It's crazy. Hey, welcome, David Shearer. Good to see you, brother. Royce Bell, you're asking about rumors of Biden taking an oath, and I don't know, brother. I haven't heard about those rumors. I'm sorry. Prodigal Son is asking, does the Pope step on the threshold? I don't know. Honestly, I don't know if they consider. I don't know what practices he does outside of the camera, and I don't know, man. I've never seen him intentionally step over it inside the Catholic Church. I don't know if they would be that brazen in front of the camera to do what they might be doing outside or underground, or in some sort of temple underground. Heaven 77 saying, do most of the secret societies originated after the last pagan wives of Solomon? After the last pagan wives of Solomon. Oh, I think I see what you're saying. Okay. I think. No, that's what. Check out the beginning part of the series where we talk about the origins of Babylon and how they were bringing their from the teachings of the Watchers that they had found after the flood, and they already started worshiping idols again, and they started worshiping the false gods and the unclean spirits, and they brought that worship to Babel, where all the nations came together in rebellion. That was the culmination. The building of the Tower of Babel was the culmination of them already practicing idolatry, and that culmination led to them getting together to try to get through the firmament to go against God. So they already had all these concepts of. Now, if you're asking if the secret society specifically, I think that word secret society is what we're using in the modern day, being a part of a club that people don't want to talk about. Therefore, it becomes suddenly a secret society. Whereas back in the day, they just called it Baal worship. You either were worshiping the multiple gods through the or you were an actual priest that was initiated as a position of rulership and ultimate allegiance to whatever king or whatever false idol that they were worshiping. And that was the big stark distinction between all the other nations versus Israel, which said all that stuff was not to be done. So I think maybe if I hear this right, I think maybe just the question is built upon the chronology of the word secret society and where that came from in a modern day. I don't think they spoke with that particular terminology back, like the semantics of just that being a culturally modern word versus back then they just called it open occultism. You just worship the Baals. All right, D-Pulse is asking, in your opinion, who's on top of the world system and this channel? Oh, thanks, brother or sister. Who's on top of the world? That's the dragon. We're going to talk about that in future parts of this series. That's definitely the dragon, Revelation 12:17. Because remember, there's no chapters and verses in Hebrew or in the Greek. So when we read Revelation, I just quoted Revelation 12:17, but then 4 verses later, we get to Revelation 13:1. And that starts the hierarchical downflow from the dragon to the first beast, and then the second beast, and then the image of the first beast that is given life. So there's this hierarchical structure that's laid all throughout Revelation 13, and all of that hierarchy is making war against the saints, those who keep the commandments of God and the testimony of Jesus Christ. So it's going to be Satan. Joy Trujillo, I apologize, sister. I did read the oath at the very beginning of the broadcast. Maybe you just got here. Yes, it declares what they're about. They have strict allegiance to the papacy, to the Pope himself, and they consider themselves the militant militia of the Pope that are assassins and political infiltrators. Chad TX asked about if you could, guys, let's try to keep maybe some of the questions directed towards what we covered tonight, but I will try to take a couple off off-topic questions, but don't be offended if I ignore your off-topic question, because I just spoke for an hour and 10 minutes on information. If you have any questions on that, that's kind of the idea. You're asking, what's your take on marijuana medicine? I think if it's there's lots of medicines that are from the earth that you can take that are really helpful for you. Marijuana obviously grows in the earth. There's different ways to cultivate and grow marijuana that can have different effects on you, and different forms of way you can either ingest it or smoke it or take it into your body through liquid, all different ways. Right. So I think that there's lots of good uses for it, just like all the plants of the earth that might have a medicinal use. Obviously, overindulgence, taking it in a way that's bad for your body, or any type of natural allergy to the different. I don't know marijuana that well. I'm not a grower. I'm not someone that's a partaker in any regular fashion. Or I've tried it before in my life, but it's not something that I do on a regular basis. So I don't know. I know that like people in that realm, they know about all the different strains and the different types and the different types of plants and the oils and the waxes and all that. I'm just using buzzwords I've heard even to talk about it in this answer right here, but I'm not an expert by any means on that topic. So do what's good for you, as far as don't overindulge to the point of losing your sobriety. But definitely if it's helpful to you, if it's medicinal in that capacity, then Lord willing, that it's good for you. Deepol's asking, what or who does the Pope symbolize? I don't know about symbolize. They're just literally an agent of Babylon. They're an agent of the beast. They're the woman, the harlot that rides the beast. I'll be going over that in future parts. But so it's not really, if you want that, Revelation tells you what it symbolizes. Pope being the head of the Roman Catholic Church. The Roman Catholic Church as a whole is, in my understanding, the woman that rides the beast, in that metaphor that is explained to you in the book of Revelation. So that's the one that woman that sits over many waters, many peoples. That's what we see through the tentacles of the Roman Catholic Church, who's led by the Papacy, which is, as we discovered tonight, literally just operating as complete spies and assassins. So, West Blaze, I guess there's a book by Pope John Paul II. Yeah, who knows? I haven't read it before, but who knows their understanding of the threshold and what superstitions they hold by it, and what internal practices they may have, or what keywords they communicate to others. Beyond all that, what they've openly stated is horrific enough. It's like, phew. They're literally wanting to baptize aliens, which we know that's the whole premise for that's false. Jeremiah 15:16 is asking, I know you're building your case for Babylon. You already told us who the beast is, but who's the false prophet and the second beast? Well, I've said before, I believe the false prophet is the second beast, by the way. And, I'm not really giving anything away. So, in my understanding, it is one of the people that comes out of the pit with the beast, and it's going to be the return of Anubis, which is why they're pushing the chimera propaganda, the transhumanism propaganda. That's why I also believe the beast himself is going to be a version of a chimera of some sort that's not going to be fully human in his modern form that he reappears as. And I think the false prophet, that will be a mouthpiece who has these magical powers, just like Anubis did to Osiris back in the day. It's this the return of that duo, in my understanding, who was also called Hades at one point because he was the ruler of the underworld. Anubis was, and then he relinquished that power to Osiris over time, and all of it was done under the overseeing or the authority of Ra, who was represented as Satan, the beast, the dragon. Satan, the dragon, whereas Apollyon, the king of Babylon, Osiris of ancient Egypt, would be the beast. Wendy's asking, do the Jesuits currently own Mount Zion? And I'm guessing you're asking about Mount Zion in Israel, literal mountain near Golgotha. And are they part of the UN? Yeah, think about what we read earlier tonight, right? The Jesuits are not their own nation state. They're in everybody's nation state. They're spies, political infiltrators, assassins. They're in everybody's nation state. Like that's the point of a spy, right? You go into other people's nations and act like you're part of that nation to work for a different subversive purpose. So yeah, they're all over the UN. Yeah. And I don't know if they own Mount Zion or not. I don't really know the answer to that question. I'm sorry. Hopefully that was decent for you. Kay Kaban is asking, does the Papacy and the Kabbalah Talmud group work together? In my understanding, they're two yes, to the degree that they're against the true law and the prophets and they're against Yeshua. So to that degree, 100%, but obviously they teach different things to the idea, like they both have man-made traditions that ignore the law and the prophets, but within their man-made traditions, they teach seemingly different things. But ultimately, they both deny the Father and the Son. They both work in mysticism of Babylon, Gnosticism, repackaged in different ways, Kabbalah to Judaism. It's a version of mystic belief, whereas stuff like transubstantiation from Catholicism is its own version of Gnostic mystic belief. So it's like they both reject the Father and the Son. They just do it in slightly different ways while sharing some commonalities. I know that's not. I'm trying to be very, very quick with this answer, but because I don't have any like slides prepared to do a full analysis breakdown for you, so hopefully that helps. But they work together as in they're different forms of deception underneath the enemy, underneath the dragon, Satan. So they're definitely working towards deceiving people. And they do that through people within their ranks that are deceived because of the man-made traditions and Gnostic beliefs. So yeah, hopefully that's, but they don't, I doubt they call each other and plan stuff, if I could put it like that. I think they're, here's another something. I mean, it's a great question because this actually reminds me of something I wanted to say tonight. The Greeks and the Egyptians, and they were always famous for, or I should say the Romans, the Greeks, and the Egyptians, they were famous for their demigods or their pantheon of gods having their own little dramas, their own little soap operas. It's like modern day comic books where you've got these superheroes, these demigods that end up having their disagreements and fighting with each other. So to ancient Osiris and the Egyptians, it was Osiris versus Set. And there's another guy I didn't even get to go into tonight. He's a former military officer in the United States military, an open Satanist, and specifically he rebranded. He learned from Anton LaVey and Jack Parsons. And then he's a prominent, I think he died in 2002. He's like a prominent Satanist. And he started his own version of the Satanic Church as an offshoot from Anton LaVey's. And he specifically called it Set, the Setians. And a lot of prominent people were a part of this. He was an open Satanist in the U.S. military. And he said that he received revelation or oracles from Satan himself, that he had a conversation with Satan himself, and that he said Satan revealed to him, well, I used to be called Set to the ancient Egyptians during the time, so you can call me Set. I don't know if you want to believe or not, but I do know that the ancient Egyptians, they had this contrast where all the pantheon of their gods that they talked about, for a time they were in harmony, but then other times they were in disharmony and they fought each other. Then they went back to having harmony, which is par for the course. If you're the enemy, that they're always that's why those houses always fall, because they're always inherently divided against themselves because they're wicked, right? So then the wickedness can never agree with each other. So the point is, I'm trying to say, is there was in ancient legend of the Egyptians, Osiris had a period of time where he was at war, at animosity with Set, which was another Egyptian god. And then to the Greeks, you would have people like Apollo being and Zeus being the head over a lot of these people, and then the other demigods below them would sometimes not like Zeus, and they would fight and different things. And so they had their own little comic books, right? Their own little dramas, their own little soap operas of conflict. That still happens today. Still. That same idea still happens today. That same idea of competition. Think about what they would do. And this is what I read in some ancient Egyptian literature and commentary on the ancient Egyptian cultures and how they had their pantheon of gods. Some of the people would be rooting for Osiris. Some of the people would be rooting for Set. See what happens there? They're still rooting for wickedness. They're still rooting to be ruled by tyrants and unclean spirits. But everybody likes choosing a side. We see that tactic still used today in the United States. It's Democrat or Republican. On a grander scale, it's U.S. versus Russia, U.S. versus Iran, U.S. versus China. Pick your decade, pick your conflict. This theater of war is a soap opera that entices all the world, enablizes them in fear, because remember, what do they say about one of the people in opposition? Oh, if this guy wins, he's going to impose all these things on you don't like and possibly kill you. So therefore, you want to root for this other guy so he can defend you from this guy. So they used to do that with the ancient gods back in the day, and now they do it more with nations and political war. That's why Jesus talked about there's wars and rumors of wars, all the way leading up to the return, the second coming of Yeshua. This is a political tactic that's a deception tactic that I didn't even cover. I was getting a little bit more specific tonight with some of the CIA programs and government programs, but this is an overall worldwide tactic that's happened since Babylon began. I mean, this has happened forever, is that you pit one ruling class, and sometimes that ruling class was represented by a demigod or an unclean spirit, versus another, and then the people are rooting for one or the other, but they're still losing because they're rooting for wickedness. This is why Yahweh would come in and say, no other gods but me. Yahweh is the one and only Most High, right? And so that this was very it's a great question, and I'm sorry I'm elaborating so much, because it did remind me that I did want to express that to everybody, that, you know, in case you weren't aware of that, that is a common political deception that we're still facing today. It's literally in every single news story and permeates your whole life in your society. If you're under the age of 100, you've heard about the political opposition between this house and that house, Democrats, Republicans, or whatever. This country versus that country. Oh my goodness, we should be afraid of this country because if he does this, then we're going to be, vulnerable over here, and we'll be susceptible to this or that. They've been using that trick on the American people and the countries of the world, people of the world, in different capacities, regionally, and then internationally. They've been using that same trick. It's another practice of Babylon. Yeah, Ruben DeStevis, that was Michael Aquino that I was talking about, the military guy that was a Satanist. And an open Satanist too, like not even like trying to hide it. And by the way, he was a part of psychological warfare operations. Yeah, he had the curly eyebrows. He did. Yeah, West Blaze, you can hear the guy on the guitar, man. He's going at it. Yeah, Tim, Aquino was involved in that, definitely. And he was, that's what he was apparently almost prosecuted, but then they kind of let him go. And yeah, he's definitely being protected. Yes, emissary of Elohim. It's the Hegelian dialectic is what I was just trying to explain, this idea of getting you to root for one of two evils. Jeff Hansen's asking, is there an estimate how many evil in the know Masons or Illuminati are among us? Is there an estimate on how many evil in the know? How many are in the know? I wonder if you meant to say are in the know. How many are in the know? I don't know. Maybe try to reword that. But no, I would say no. I'm sorry. There's not an estimate of... they're secret societies, so they don't always reveal their role of how many people and what the names of those people are in each town. I just know that there is a literal Masonic temple in nearly every town in America. So I want you to think about that. It's crazy. There's one, half a mile from me, near the courthouse. It's funny because they're always near the courthouse, by the way. And I've wanted to take my camera in there and see if they'll let me interview somebody, because I want to ask them, about. I know that they believe that the earth is covered by a dome and set on pillars. It's a part of their symbolism and their artwork and their picture boards, and it's a part of a lot of their belief sets. I mean, you cannot be a 33rd degree Freemason if you think you live in a ball. You have to understand the true nature of what the grand architect built, which is a flat surface of land enclosed by a dome. So I'd love to go in there and try to interview them, but then I'm like, do I want to be on their radar? Because I live in kind of a small town, so I don't want to, do I want to get on their radar right now? Does it matter? I know what they believe, but how would they respond? Would they even give me an interview? You know what I'm saying? I don't know. We'll see. I'm still praying on it. But yeah, they're all over the place, guys. All right. Great questions tonight, guys. I appreciate it. Lisa Mendez is asking, Sean, are you aware Kenneth Copeland and Tony Palmer video message of the Pope a while back? I'm not familiar with what you're talking about. I apologize. So you're welcome to send me a link, I guess, if you want. But I mean, unfortunately, there is a lot of Freemasons that are in the Southern Baptist Convention, that are in a lot of churches, positions of pastors. Again, guys, you know them by their fruit. You don't throw a blanket accusation. Sorry, there's a fly. Somehow a fly got in here again tonight. Don't throw a blanket accusation across the average church member, and not even the average pastor. Many of them are trained in bad information. Okay, so that's why you see me be very gentle with them when I do debates and things like that, and have them on as guests. I just don't come out and say, "Oh, I know you're a Freemason shill that's ran by the Jesuits and the Pope, trying to destroy, working for the beast and Satan, trying to destroy people because you teach the laws done away with." No, I don't treat them like that. I know I've grown up around pastors. My dad was a pastor. He was not involved in a secret society. He was just taught what he was taught at the seminary. He was taught. You know what I'm saying? Like, he didn't know any different. Now he's got a lot to consider later stages in his life, right? But at the same time, I grew up, he had friends that were pastors that were of all different denominations, and these were good-hearted men that didn't push any secret societies. They didn't push any weird craziness. They had a great heart for people. They showed Torah in an amazing amount of ways, just like my father did, to the people in the community and the people in their church. So again, yes, there are prominent pastors, and there's not so prominent pastors that may be a part of these secret societies on the side. But I just would not throw a blanket accusation across all of mainstream church. Remember, these are our brothers in the faith. It's the greatest, most ripest harvest out there. It's our job to go out there. If we have realized that more of the Bible is applicable to us and helps us in our walk with God, to walk with him and to love him better, let's go share that with them that are still sitting under deception, right? Let's go share with them. So, yeah, I know that you didn't. I'm sorry to go off on the rant. I know you didn't. That wasn't what your question is about, and I kind of took it to something that was on my heart. But you're welcome to send me that video clip if you'd like. James Carter's asking, interesting show, Sean. New info for me about that Dagon threshold thing. It seems threshold traditions have to come from somewhere. Curious your thoughts about other threshold hopping customs. Well, I know that there's even though no one can find the origin of it, there is just the general threshold custom of the man carrying his wife across the threshold of the house. I know that I don't know where that came from. As far as I could research, it went back to the Celts in like the 15 or 1400s or whatever. But I don't know if that was something that they practiced in the temples of Dagon or Baal or not. I'm sorry, I don't know. I couldn't find any origin on that. I know that in Judaism they talk about a threshold covenant with specifically a sacrifice and cutting open an animal and walking through the pieces of it. And it's funny. I need to do a whole separate show on that, because I know that there's other prominent ministries in the Torah community out there that take that Judaism threshold covenant and they apply it to Genesis 15. And guys, that is not what's happening in Genesis 15. Abraham was a priest. He made an altar of unhewn stone, and he did a regular sacrifice. And the Father lit the fire, just like we see in Leviticus 9, Judges chapter 6, and a whole bunch of other places in Scripture. First Kings 8, like the father will, First Kings 18, with, a whole bunch of different places. This is lots of precedent. It's just the wording. People have assumed some ideas from Judaism and imposed them on Genesis 15, and therefore it leads them into an entire bride theory and all kinds of other theories as a result of it. And I'm just like, it's all because they assume a specific type of ceremony is taking place, when in fact that ceremony is not Torah. And when in fact Jubilees directly tells you that Abraham built an altar and had pieces thrown across, and the father lit the fire. It was a priestly, Torah-based moment in Genesis 15. And it's very simple. So, yes, I don't know if that's what you're asking about or looking for, but that's the only other kind of threshold covenants I'm familiar with. But yeah, I guess it was. Yeah, you're welcome, brother. You're welcome. I am going to do a video on that, because it's actually been something that people have asked me, because I talk about the bride and I try to explain to people from scripture that, the metaphors of the father speaking in metaphoric fashion about Israel and treating her like a wife and that kind of stuff, and versus Yeshua being someone different, who's the son of Yahweh and not Yahweh, and how his bride is said to be the New Jerusalem, and we're under Yeshua's authority. And that's why, so just people mix metaphors for the sake of the Trinity, and then that gets carried over into some certain Torah-based ideologies that they go into this bride theory, and the northern house being divorced and the southern house not being divorced. And I tried to explain how there's a huge plot holes in that idea in my identity crisis video, my bride series videos, and I go over that kind of stuff. And all of that goes back to an assumption of threshold covenant from Genesis 15. So I need to do just a separate video on that. In fact, that was at one point, amongst other believing brothers that have YouTube ministries, we were in conversation about this like 2.5 years ago. And I was trying to explain to them, like, this is why in the Torah community it's so prominently taught that there's bride theory and this, divorced, which is the way they take the divorce language and make a theory out of it, leads to the bride theory, leads to a Trinitarian version. It's all built on a assumption from Judaism, from this threshold covenant that's imposed onto Genesis 15. And I just remember them just not knowing how to respond, because they didn't realize that's where it originated. And, just so many misconceptions that are tied together sometimes that lead us off into these strange theories. So I just try to keep it simple and just like, what do the words in the Bible say? Let's just go from there, So yeah, Ruben, it's going to happen, brother. Stay at it. Just keep at it, brother. Share it with love, share it with patience. Just remember, the sower sows the word. And if you have a chance to talk to a minister of another ministry, of church or online ministry or whatever, that's awesome. For one, if they actually let you talk to them, just remember, the sower sows the word. Keep at it, brother. To do it with love and patience. Yeah. Yeah, prodigal son, I'm surprised he let you stay for a year. But hey, if you know the guy, tell him to reach out to me. I'm glad to have him on for a discussion, not a debate, just a loving discussion. Yeah, James Carter, I thought the same thing, especially coming from Judaism. I thought the same thing. Very interesting choice of terms. But the application of that, what they define as threshold covenant versus what, Baal and Dagon temples practice, and what, initiates in the Freemasonry practice, I didn't see a big correlation there. But yeah, interesting that they use the same language. All right, guys, I'm done for the night. I got some things to do to prepare for this weekend. To my knowledge, I think that if you hang with us for Kingdom of Context, I don't know if I'm going to be ready to have a milk and meat tomorrow night. I would like to. I just don't know if I have time. But definitely we'll have Torah portions. And then, to my knowledge, Matthew will be joining me this Saturday for another episode of Testing Paul. So I really appreciate you guys being here tonight. Just My wife and I always appreciate your prayers, and we appreciate your support. If you subscribe to our channels if you haven't already, share these videos in love, and help us get the word out. And overall, you guys are awesome. I really appreciate everybody for interacting in the live chat and for being here. So we'll hope to see you. If I have time, these next 2 weeks are going to be like super busy getting ready for the Taking on the World Conference and some other things. But if I have time, we'll have another Kingdom Cast on Monday night. So, all right, guys, appreciate you. Love you. And we hope to see you next time.